Hello interwebs. Today I'm going to be talking about the downtime. As you can see, it is actually raining, so I am going to have to make this quick. It's going to be a little bit different than normal. Today I just kind of wanted to talk about the downtime. We read the Bible, we as Christians, and we go to church. We see and hear stories about, Joseph being sold into slavery and going to prison, and then he's in charge of, Potiphar's house, and he's in charge of all of Egypt, and then eventually there's a drought, his brothers come, and we read stuff like that. We read, Abraham's going to have a bunch of kids, and then all of a sudden he has Isaac, and yay, hooray. That we read about the nation of Israel leaving Egypt, the Jewish people leaving Egypt, and going into the Promised Land, and wandering in the desert and stuff. We read everything in a very particular way, and that because we're reading stories, even like, we read Jesus' life, we read Acts and Romans and stuff in the New Testament, everything that we read in the Bible, we read in a manner that is, we read months and sentences, we read years and paragraphs, and we get a very skewed view of like time frames and things that God works in, and we're almost conditioned, as I've talked about in the past in many things, like, X plus Y plus Z equals miracle, do this, and God will just miraculously provide. We're always looking for the miraculous. We're looking for the big thing that God's going to do, and, like the big plan in your life, and all the different things like church talks about, and that we're all kind of conditioned to, we read the Bible and it's like, okay, God moves quickly. But what we forget whenever we're looking at the Bible and looking at these stories that are very encouraging, we read all of this and we get a very skewed perspective of the time frames, because we do read years in a paragraph, but we forget that in these stories there are years, quite literally, that go by. In many of the cases that we read in terms of like, great things that God did bring about the using Joseph in Egypt, but like we read it as like, a couple of paragraphs, but in reality, we know that there were 7 years of plenty before the famine even hit for Joseph's brothers to go to Egypt in the first place. We also know that he was in prison for 2 years, so there's 9 years already. And we don't even know how long he served in Potiphar's house after he became a slave anyway. Like, we're talking at least 9 years of God working little things around in his life, and he sought God and honored God in what he did. And God worked little things around, and we get in these times where nothing's happening. Nothing big is happening, and we're conditioned, and we look for, this big major thing. We look for God to just do the miraculous. In essence, the breakthrough and miracle and stuff that everybody looks for all the time. But what gets forgotten in that search is that God is always at work in all things. He says God works all things to the good of those who serve him. So God is always working in all things, even when you don't see it. The good, the bad, whatever it may be, working it around for the good of those who serve him, and more importantly than that, to accomplish his will. Something that's encouraging to me, and I'll be honest, I'm at a point right now where there's a lot of things up in the air. I find comfort, and it strengthens my faith whenever I look at, the Bible, and I see things like Abraham leaving his country, and God said that he'd make him, the father of many nations and all this stuff. And Abraham left his country, and he, probably thought he was going to have a ton of kids. And years went by, and he didn't. But God was still working something out. God still had a plan. God still took care of him, even though what he thought he was going to see didn't come to pass. Whenever we get this skewed perception of time, and we read years as paragraphs, we leave out the bits where these people were still human beings. I personally feel like I'm in this time where nothing is really happening. I feel like I'm in this space where, there's nothing worth documenting, I guess, would be a good way to put it. Just using it as an example, if my life were a story in the Bible, I'm in one of the days of the months that wasn't documented. between the bullet points, really. You know, to a large degree, I feel like probably a lot of us feel that way. There may be something that you're praying about, something that you're seeking, something that there's stuff going on that you just don't understand, and you try to see God, and you feel nothing. You're in one of the undocumented days. There's years that happen in the paragraph, and you're in one of the days that wasn't documented because nothing happened. I find it encouraging for myself in this time to remember that those days happened for everyone. It's not just me. Not everything is monumental. Not everything is something that is going to be a turning point. It's not pivotal in the story. But we need to understand that it's in those times God is still at work, because God's at work every day. And although there might be things going on, that there's nothing that's pivotal in the story in your own day, in your own month, in your own year, it doesn't mean that God isn't working something somewhere else. It may seem like nothing's happening. It may very well be that there's a pause in the narrative of the story of your life, but there's always something going on. God is always at work, and many times there's little subtle changes that while we're looking for this big picture, this great thing that we're all told to look for, this huge breakthrough and stuff, in reality what we needed was something very small that comes in so subtly that we forget to even give God credit for it. But it changes things in just the right way that it alleviates the pressure and the stress and the pain. All I'm really saying is that sometimes when we hit that stall, we hit the days in the year that weren't worth documenting. We hit those times that aren't the pivotal moments of our lives. It's very easy to start doubting God. It's very easy to start questioning where God is in your life. It's very easy to honestly start blaming God for things that are going wrong and directions that change and things that don't make any sense. But we have to keep our faith strong and remember, it's through the maintained faith and trust in God during the days when nothing was happening that brought about the pivotal moments. If you read the story, they always talk about they served God, or they loved God, or they worshipped God, and they gave credit to God, and they were righteous before God, and all this stuff. The faith and trust in God has to remain regardless. To quote another wonderful Old Testament story, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they even said to the king of, I believe it was Babylon, before he threw them in the fire, that God can save us. If he doesn't, though, we still will not bow. And you know, that's just it. Like, their faith was rooted in who God was and what he was capable of. And it was that faith in him and what he was capable of that I believe brought about God doing it. A lot of times we get into this place where there's nothing happening. You start looking at all the circumstances and things that don't make any sense and things that don't seem to add up. But I personally take some comfort in knowing that there were days that weren't worth documenting, where there were days that they just kept on keeping on and there was nothing that they could see, but that God was always working somewhere, somehow, some way. And, you know, many people would call it circumstances, fate, whatever. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. To me, it's God working. And I will give God credit and glory for what he does to work things out in my life. If you're like me and you have some things going on and you're questioning and stuff, just remember, sometimes there's days not worth documenting. There's days where it doesn't seem like anything's happening because what can be seen by us, it doesn't look any different. It just looks like the same old normal day. It's Tuesday, it's Thursday, it's Monday, it's Saturday, it's just a day. It's a routine. It's you just go, you do. You do what you have to do. But God is always working. And as he says, he'll work all things for the good of those who serve him. So our goal, much like seek first the kingdom of heaven and he'll provide everything that you need, our goal is serve him. And he will work everything to good. Are we going to know how? No. Are we going to know the time frame? No. Is it going to happen immediately? Probably not. Are we going to see and be able to make sense of it while it's happening? Most likely no. But we have to trust that he's true to his word and that he will do what he says he's going to do. And in the meantime, while we're waiting for him to work everything to good, even when it doesn't make any sense and we don't see what he's doing, we still have to seek first the kingdom of heaven, and we will have everything that we need. And we have to trust that, even when we don't see it, when we don't see things looking like they're going to work, when things don't make sense. I just wanted to take a minute and hopefully encourage some of you that, yeah, there's times that don't look like anything's happening. And during those times, we need to just continue to trust God. And on the days when you don't feel like keeping on, just keep on. Just keep trusting. I guess all I'm really trying to say is don't let the quiet times fool you into thinking that God's not working. Don't let your trust in God be shaken by silence. So anyways, I'm going to leave this at that. If you like this video, like it. If you want to subscribe, please do so. Until next time, bye.